Oh, wonderful. How wonderful. Two people I really enjoy. Oh, I kind of feel Christmassy all of a sudden.
You sent out that nice ad that had this photo of you looking all proper and, just decided, well, I guess I had to join this one.
Great. Good. And Deborah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, I have to say. It's Friday.
I know.
For the week and doing well.
Good.
Amy, very nice to see your name on the screen there.
Hi, William. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Excellent. Excellent. Jay, I don't think we've met. Maybe we have in some massive forum. Nice. Welcome. Nice to see you here.
Likewise. Sorry, had to hop outside. Good to meet you as well.
And Jay, what unit are you in?
I am with the architectural engineering group in the civil environmental architectural engineering program. So I'm a first year instructor with them.
Great, great, great.
Yeah.
Tina, great to see your photo there. Oh, this is a very nice turnout. I was sitting here at 3 to the hour saying to myself, another Kuskin video. No one shows up. And now it's we have a very nice turnout. So let's see here. People are kind of still coming in. I was thinking, this session is recorded automatically. And I just got a note to say that we're not going to edit them down. So I was thinking we'll begin. And since so far we're a fairly small group, maybe we could do some introductions. And why don't I start us off, and then we'll do some introductions and talk about the semester. So let me start us off formally. Welcome to the College Teaching Conversations in the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. My name is William Kuskin, and just a touch of background. I've been running a volunteer group. They probably don't feel like volunteers anymore because I've been running it since June, and they've stuck with me. So this group did a winter symposium, and during the winter symposium on teaching, there was a hue and cry. I don't think I am exaggerating to say. A number of people really said, hey, we need some kind of forum to talk about teaching. So after getting my courses running, I've set this forum up. And my thinking about it is I've thrown out some loose themes. For today, resilience. And I'd like to move us towards that in the end. However, I'm really thinking about this as an open forum for the discussion of teaching during the pandemic. Perhaps it will continue after the pandemic. I think that it's important. I think teaching is the lifeblood of the university. It is really at the core of our mission. What sets us apart from many, many research institutes is our relationship to students. So I think talking about it is tremendously valuable. So I'd like to move us towards resilience, because I think resilience, to me, it encompasses so many things right now. It encompasses faculty, students. It seems to me like the challenge of this semester is keeping going. You know, the challenge of last March was just encountering the crisis. The challenge of the summer was preparing for another semester, and that semester was its own challenge. But now it feels like we're in a different space, a space that demands a kind of ability to bounce back. So I've spoken enough. I was wondering if people would just be so kind as to introduce themselves and say a word or two about kind of what they want to talk about, and then we'll just go from there. So Deborah, start us off.
Hi, I'm Deborah Warren. I'm the manager of the Learning Design Group Instructional Design Team out of Continuing Education. And starting last April, Before that, my team had provided support mainly for continuing ed courses and summer session online. Starting last April, we are providing support for anybody who makes their way to us. So we've been doing some office hours. We've been doing working with component instructors, online instructors, face-to-face instructors. And then we just launched our very first online teaching academy, which we threw the thing. William, you're not hearing this. So we threw it together in 2 months. It was a crazy 2 months, 2.5 months. And we have a little over 60 participants. They are faculty instructors at CU Boulder. And it's a 4-week course, and we are going through and we're having loads of fun talking about measurable objectives and syllabus and all kinds of stuff this week. And so each week we cover a different topic. So it's been pretty exciting. The last week we are going to talk about teaching strategies, instructor presence, engaging students, and I am hoping that we'll have discussions about resilience for the participants in the OTA, but also for students.
Great, great. And I am in that class.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel thrown together at all. It's
Okay.
flat. It's wonderful. Amy, a quick word as we go around.
Hi, I'm Amy Sullivan. I'm a senior research associate in electrical engineering. I'm actually not classroom teaching right now, but I love to talk about teaching, and I thought I'd join in the fun.
Excellent. Excellent. Yay.
My name is Earhart. I just joined the faculty in August as an instructor in the Civil Environmental Architectural department, focusing on, so I've been teaching studio architecture classes as well as freshman level whole smattering, as well as the senior capstone for the students. So I guess something that I've been thinking about and percolating on is I have a lot of students that are frazzled and freaking out. And I've also been, haven't taught before, so I'm coming into this with fresh. So I've been trying to figure out, was this normal or is this a symptom of the pandemic, and navigating that. And yeah, that's just been a lot of emails coming in late at night, and some scary, like some significant issues students are having, and just trying to make sure that I'm there for them so that they can be resilient.
That's great. That's great. Well, Tina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first I have to say hi to Jay Earhart, who I've known since you were in elementary school, right?
I believe so. I'm from Boulder. I've been around CU since 2012. So that's about it.
Jay went to school with my boys. So I'm a clinical psychologist and a teaching professor in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience, and I've been on campus for 21 years or something, but doing a lot of teaching, and also interested in campus mental health, especially lately. And I've done a couple of projects related to that in the last couple of years with student affairs and the Crown Institute. And yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing kind of, to Jay's wanderings is that we've seen really a decline in student mental health generally in the last 5 or 10 years. That's been evident in a lot of the large scale studies of campus mental health. But I think that the pandemic certainly, and some of the studies that have come out of, how students were doing before and after the pandemic hit, have really substantiated the idea that students are really struggling at a level that is just sort of unprecedented. And so we're really interested in what, especially as somebody who teaches a lot, we're really interested in what we can do in the classroom to promote resilience and to kind of increase connection and engagement and help to destigmatize ideas about wellness and mental health so that students feel like, they have a place. I think, post-pandemic too, students' connections with faculty are so important because, they're isolated from the campus in lots of ways that are new. So anyway, I'll stop talking, but I'm just really pleased. Thank you, William, for inviting me, and pleased to be part of whatever conversation y'all want to have about that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I see the theme is building here. Michael, please introduce yourself and say a word or two.
Sure. So I'm a new faculty in chemical biological engineering. And like Jay, this is my first class. In addition to kind of everything we heard, I also faced the challenge that the background of the students in the class is wildly diverse. And so that creates a bunch of additional challenges that I think is impacting kind of the students' ability to learn.
When you first said that, I literally thought you meant the background of the Zoom was wildly diverse, which in my mind actually kind of does tie together to the way we encounter our students, right? I mean, like, we have such an artificial view of them that it's hard to understand where they're coming from and who they are. So I'm just saying that, boy, I appreciate the struggle that you're struggling with, Michael, the mediated nature of this on top of the nature of university teaching where the students maybe come from different places. Difficult. Jason.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Lagapa. I'm a professional development lead at the Center for Teaching and Learning. I really like having conversations about teaching, so I'm happy to be here. And Becca Ciancanelli, my colleague from the CTL, suggested I come by, and so I'm eager for the conversation.
Excellent. Wonderful. Davin, sorry. I'm probably still mispronouncing it.
That's all right. Yeah, my name is Davin Hensey. I'm the chair of the Mechanical Engineering undergraduate committee. And so I'm also here on behalf of other folks in the department. And in the previous semester, we kind of hosted a lot of spaces for conversations across the faculty about teaching, along different themes. And so I'm curious sort of what this space at the college level, provides in terms of that need, which is certainly continuing. And then also personally, I am teaching this semester. It's a small graduate class, so not some of the same sort of challenges that are associated with teaching under these kind of pandemic conditions. But I did teach a large undergraduate class a year ago when the first transition happened. So I have some personal experience with that, but here I think a little bit more wearing the hat of undergraduate committee for ME as a whole.
Have you seen in your administrative position in the department, have you seen a kind of change this semester in the reports that you're getting?
What type of reports are you referring to?
To you or students coming to you and saying, I'm at a loss, I'm losing students, or students coming to you saying, or just have you noticed dropping? Have any signs popped up on your computer screen that this is a unique moment, different from last semester?
Yeah, I'm not sure we have a whole lot of data yet for this semester to distinguish it from the previous one. I mean, certainly we did a lot of assessment last semester and a lot of review of data on classes that were dropped, classes that were elected to be pass-fail, and then just student surveys regarding their academics and mental health. We haven't repeated any of that analysis yet this term, so it's a little bit anecdotal. I would say, from the student side, things seem to be similar to last semester. And on the faculty side, I think there's a little less of a kind of frenzy of, you know, oh my gosh, how do I handle this? But there's still, I think, a big need for having these conversations and a benefit for talking to colleagues about how we handle assessment, grading, exams, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Great. Heath.
Well, you know, just because of backgrounds, you know, I just had to, you know, choose some backgrounds for you that are different. So here's my TARDIS, and this is how I get all my work done, because I always go back an hour, so I get another hour in the day done. So I actually have 25 hours in the day. But so I'm a senior instructor here in the EE department, and I think William knows that I love being a guinea pig because I'm in most of these new projects, and I'm really enjoying working with the neuroscience department and the curriculum that they put together for the College of Engineering. I'm actually implementing in my class this semester. I'm actually changing it a little bit. I'm trying to get rid of all the words that say pandemic directly into it, because I really want to make this part of my curriculum moving forward for every semester moving forward. So if I'm going to be converting it into my curriculum, I want to make sure it's appropriate for the future. And I think there's one nice benefit no matter what. The students seem to be really enjoying it. I mean, they seem to be really eager in it. And I think there's a side benefit for me. I think my FCQs will go up because I get all these reports from the students. I say, thank you very much for caring about us. So I think that it was a benefit, but they seem to be enjoying it so far.
Excellent. Oh, you brought up so many great things.
Yeah.
Resilience curriculum, permanent change, just great. And so positive and great background. Bob.
Yes, excuse me back there. My Zoom periodically crashes my computer, and naturally it did it a few minutes ago. Yeah, so I'm a professor in electrical engineering. I've been conspiring with William Kuskin for quite a few years on Coursera and distance teaching. And certainly his nice invite by email, I couldn't resist that and had to come. I think for me, this experience, I mean, I like distance teaching, and Coursera is this asynchronous kind of distance form of teaching that I always associated with working professionals who were self-motivated and knew why they were there, and not with, you know, anything I had an interest in trying to use for our regular on-campus students. But here we are. So last semester I did an experiment using one of my Coursera courses for my on-campus class. And I think what I learned from that is that this highly structured way of teaching with clear, you know, educational objectives and tying the lecture tightly to the work, and all of these things that you hear about in theory. First of all, the Coursera platform really enforces those. And then when I used it with the on-campus students that are no longer on campus, I think that structure really helped them. So when they're home sitting alone and trying to make sense out of things, that high level of structure and connection really was, I think, a positive thing for them for the distance. This semester, I'm trying to teach a lab course by distance, and I really feel like I don't want to just turn it into a simulation course that students are really building stuff at home, and that's a real challenge. I'm trying to structure it the best I can in a kind of Coursera type structure, although it's an on-campus class. So this is a real experiment and a lot of work, but there's a lot of questions like, how do students get help debugging their circuit when they're not sitting in lab and we don't have TAs and me to help them? And how are we going to have like lab consultation sessions and Slack channels and things to try to help them along with the things we're trying to teach in a lab course at a distance. So this is a new, I guess, adventure, and it's born of necessity.
Fascinating, great things. Structure, the asynchronous and now remote, these definitions have to be porous. Becca, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Chuncanelli. I also work in the Center for Teaching and Learning with Jason. I'm the inclusive pedagogy lead, but I also have been on campus for years teaching chemistry. So I've taught chemistry for the Student Academic Success Center, which is a multicultural learning community. So I've been in teaching these small classes of students that are first gen and low income. And so that really forms the way I think about resilience, because we are so focused on getting our students to stay, and to feel really supported in the way that they think, right? In the way that they learn, in the way that they experience CU, which can be really, really different than how a lot of students experience CU. So I actually had 2 students approach me last semester and said, we want to figure out some way to give this knowledge we have as fourth years back to the first years. So there's so much we know, and we wish we could give it to the first years. And they've been recording these videos, and so much of what they say in these videos has to do with mindset. And I really appreciate what Bob just said about having Slack channels and having all these different ways to connect, because so many students don't feel safe reaching out in one format, but they might in another, and they might reach out to a peer in a way they wouldn't reach out to a TA or a professor. So I really think through relationships, and how relationships build that resiliency and the way they learn and the way that they find themselves on campus. Like how am I finding myself here? How do I, relate so that I can really have my mind clear from learning? Because if they're navigating in their brain, do I belong here? How do I manage this remote world, right? Who do I connect with? That takes up a lot of cognitive load. So it's like trying to free them up so that they have as much space for learning. So I appreciate, thank you for letting me join, even though I'm not an engineering prof. I love being around William's conversations because they're always very out of the box thinking, which I appreciate.
Thank you. And thank you for kind of taking Bob's point and moving it over further into communication. Absolutely wonderful. Lyndon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lyndon Mcclure. I'm an adjunct faculty in electrical engineering. I've been teaching a graduate level course that's very lab focused for over 20 years now.
Wow.
6 years ago, I moved to Oregon, and so I've been doing remote teaching since then. And I had to develop some new techniques for doing that teaching, but I could always rely on students being together in a classroom and in the lab environment until last year. And then I had my transition where it went completely remote from both ends. And it was very challenging in this type of a lab setting because there's a lot of complexity involved in this course, and the students would end up in lots of different interesting situations, which were not easy to debug remotely. And so we figured out some new techniques on how to deal with that. I think the biggest change that I've tried to do in my course over the last year and a half is increase the amount of flexibility I offer. I think flexibility is the key word that I rely on as I go through each day's decision making. And I've tried to add more ways to support students and allow them to do different things to be successful. And I've tried to communicate a lot more support for people and understanding of their situations. Since I work in industry, I get to see a lot of different things globally and understand things from how it's impacting global business as well as what's happening at the university environment. And I try to bring some of that teaching into the classroom. But I do see a lot of stress from students, and especially last year. This spring, the students, so far, I've got a larger population and they seem pretty positive, and they've kind of figured out how to navigate some of the remote learning. And I'm hopeful that we can have a very positive semester. And I just saw the announcement of this and I thought it was interesting, so I'd pop in and listen a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. You've added so much. The story of your own transition to remote teaching is great, but then your nuance of that into flexibility is wonderful. Ariel, I see you popped in there. Did you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. I am not in front of my computer, so I'm just on my phone, but I'm so grateful for these conversations. And I'm the undergrad programs director in Atlas, and have really been working on a lot of ways of kind of incorporating more, I don't know if soft skills is the right word, but or workplace competencies, or sort of these things beyond just technically what students are learning. Thinking about how we can really improve both our curriculum and our student experience overall. And I think our faculty are really creative in how they're already doing this, but I think providing more structure around it is something I'm really actively working on. And it's been just really inspiring to hear how others are doing it. And I think, William, I'm really grateful for this gathering, because I think there's such value in coming together around how we're teaching, especially now. So I'm kind of just listening in, but thanks for a moment.
Thank you. And thank everyone thank you all for joining us. And I find it so, for my own resilience, I find it so important to hear from everyone and to recognize this as, however ephemeral, a community of thinkers right now. And I'm so glad to hear a little bit of each of your stories. So thinking about resilience, some words I wrote down were frazzled, great word, gentle in what it points to, structure, student background, communication, flexibility, curricular change, and softness, soft skills, softness. So what are people thinking? What are people thinking about these topics, about resilience and the words that we heard? Where do you want to go? I really think we need just an open forum for people to talk. So where do you want to go with this? What strikes people is really important to talk about?
I mean, I thought the comment Lyndon made about students had a big adapting process, and the expectation or hunch that they'll be better this semester and more able to cope this semester than last semester, I think is interesting. I think we faculty went through the same thing, and I don't know, maybe this is all going to work out. We're all going to get really good at distance.
You know, I think I'm going to support both you, Bob and Lyndon. I feel like my students are more positive this semester at the start compared to maybe last semester. You know, I think a lot of them they were just really disappointed that beginning of the new school year that they were going to be remote, because we actually started remote right away just because our building was being renovated. But they do seem to be relatively more positive, I would say, in general. And you know, part of the resilience training, I tell them these are life things, not just for this pandemic, but it's also helpful for me, and because these are skills that are helpful for both the teaching faculty and the students. And I think they really like to hear that we're human as well. And so I think that's a key thing, that show that we have some vulnerability, and I think that gives a better connection there.
I've been engaged in a lot of conversation with many international students, and their experience is completely different than my other students. And they're the ones that are waking up at 2 a.m. to come to class or staying up. And I've just been trying to navigate their learning, our other students, which are all from different backgrounds themselves. But then the international students specifically are something that I've been just hearing a lot of feedback from. They've been reaching out a lot more than in years past when I've taught.
Can I ask a question, Jay? How did you, because I don't think they always do that, right? The international students don't always do that. So is there something you did that opened up that stream of communication so they could tell you?
One thing that I did for one class was I brought in recent alumni. We have a lot of Kuwaiti students in our program just because they come from the architectural engineering program. So I had an alumni from the Kuwaiti, one of my friends when I was an undergrad, come in and speak about his experience a bit. I think just making that connection for the Kuwaiti students and the Saudi Arabian students, because they clump together a bit. That worked out well, as well as making a significant effort to reach out to some of them during breakout rooms. That's the first breakout room I go to really try to engage with them, because otherwise I think a lot of professors take it as an afterthought, but making sure you're paying attention.
I think this is Jay's present.
Okay.
Oh wait. Maybe.
Sorry, I'm doing a lot of parenting today. I was wondering too, I know some people have sort of sent out a survey, to sort of ask students really specifically, like, where are you located? And do you have anything you need me to know about in the class? So I just wondered if you had sort of given them a chance to tell you that they're getting up at 2 a.m, or if you were, it sounds like you inferred it by relationship moments.
Yeah, both. I mean, so one class, yeah, because I was forming groups and I wanted to have people in the same time zone for a senior capstone. But for the other ones, more just checking in with them, seeing that it's dark outside in the window.
Right.
We're obviously in different time zones.
Right. That's awesome.
One thing I've been just trying to do in my breakout rooms is make sure that if someone isn't speaking up, I actually ask them if they have any questions as well. I just make sure that everyone feels like they have an opportunity to participate. And a lot of times the people that don't really ask questions actually have really good questions if you ask them to, if they have one, right? They're more willing to speak up. So, which is helpful not just to them, but to everyone else in the breakout room.
When we were doing our introductions, I didn't talk about my background, and I'm new to CU Boulder, and I was teaching for 16 years at the University of Texas Permian Basin as an English professor. And so when I think of this idea of resilience, first of all, the thing that came to mind was a Samuel Beckett quote where he says, "I can't go on, I'll go on." And so it's a nice sort of contradictory moment, but there's this sort of like, for me, when I hear this idea of resilience, I think of my own inner resolve, and it's nothing heroic, I don't think. It's just this sort of sense that I must persist. And then I was thinking about how that relates to students. I think when I taught last spring, an online class, the students just showed up, and part of my resolve sort of was in response to their showing up. And so for me, this idea of resilience is, as Becca has been sort of saying, maybe based on relationship. And so it's a sort of a feedback loop. When I would sort of see the students show up, it sort of strengthened my own resolve to keep going. And so that's maybe the way that I think about how resilience might work.
That's really well said. I see it as either a virtuous spiral or a descending spiral, right? That there's this real, as the community leader in the class, there's this real sense of either inspiration or despair, and how you balance that, how you balance it with a large group, with a small group, that really, to me, speaks to resilience and the possibility of hope. So, more.
I love that comment. Jason, thank you for that. And I think it really speaks to, some of the things that have really struck me while teaching through this whole thing, doing remote teaching, which was on my bucket list of things never to do in my lifetime, but here we are. So, but I think that there's just so much importance about relationships and keeping students connected and engaged, not only with professors, but also with each other. There's so much despair about isolation right now. And again, I said this earlier, but I think students' relationships with their faculty members are even more important, right, than they were before. And so I just really appreciate the idea that part of what you're infusing into the classroom has to do with your own kind of authentic relationships with students, and that we convey to them, this is hard. This is hard for everyone, and that if we're real about that, then I think somebody else was talking about this earlier, maybe it was Jay, but just that if we're real about that, I think we earn this trust and connection that can really carry us through a lot of what we're trying to accomplish in the classroom in terms of content and information and lesson plans, right? If students know that this is a place where they're acknowledged for the for the difficulties and sometimes, the particular circumstances that they're going through. So thanks for that.
So Tina, while you're on screen here,
yeah,
would you talk a little bit about your work and about the resilience curriculum that you developed?
Sure. So I have to give credit to Rosie Kaiser, who's not on the call today because I don't know, she's a very resilient person given how many meetings she has to deal with per week. But anyway, she's not on the call, but she's one of my close colleagues and dear friends. And so it's really just such a pleasure to get to work with her on pretty much anything. But she was asked to, think about what we could do to support the engineering faculty during the spring pause originally. And after several conversations, it turned into this sort of bigger project. And it was probably good that we were experiencing a pandemic over the Christmas break, because this is what we did instead of, I don't know, going to the Bahamas or whatever. But so the resilience curriculum, and I can do some screen sharing if that would be useful. Okay, so let me just give you a little bit of an introduction. So the resilience curriculum, for those of you who are not already using it or implementing it in your classrooms, was designed to provide some tools for students that were, were focused on, this sort of high burnout, high stress that students are experiencing, and frankly, faculty are experiencing too. And to kind of boost academic resilience, provide, opportunities for support and again, like connection and engagement, which we know from, a lot of the research on academic functioning in university students is associated with not only kind of social emotional well-being, but also with academic success, right? And to just also provide some concrete tools whereby faculty could allow students to, acknowledge the importance of wellness and to work on it a little bit. And I think incorporating these kinds of things into the classroom is a whole different animal, I don't know, from my perspective, than having them just available on campus. It conveys a whole different message about, we see you, we know this is important. In fact, it's so important that we're going to spend a little bit of class time on it. And that, I think, is a very different and important message, not only to students in terms of how they're functioning right now, but also to students in terms of, understanding that these kinds of, resilience coping tools are part of what's going to be important for them after they leave CU, when they're in graduate school or when they're in their careers, that, learning how to kind of navigate these challenges is important in the long run. So I'll pull up a couple of things. All right. Let's see. So here's sort of, can y'all see that? Right. So this is just sort of the overview of what the curriculum is about. Some of it is really, overlaps with what I just said of kind of maximizing student academic success, promoting community and engagement, and supporting student wellness and stress coping. And I'll show you a couple of these modules that are talked about here, but we developed more modules than probably anybody can get through, but that's okay. We'll use them for other purposes. So there's a number of modules, and each module then has several activities that are kind of little bite-size activities that you can use in the classroom. So let me get to.
And Tina,
Yeah.
if people are saying, wait a minute, there's a whole resilience curriculum, where is it? How do they get it?
Oh, it's on the Canvas webpage. There's a Canvas webpage for it. And I have the link for it.
Would you throw that into the chat?
Huh?
Would you throw that into the chat?
Sure thing. Let me go back and find it in my email. It may take me a second. Would it be useful for me to bring up some pieces of the curriculum and then send you all the link? Would that be a good use of time right now?
I think it would be great to see the link, and maybe for you to just summarize what it is that what's at the core of that curriculum.
Yeah, perfect. So so what we've got in here, I mean, the kind of most kind of basic element has to do with stress coping, right? Which is Rosie's, she's more of the neuroscience person than I am. But so the idea is to help students think about setting intentions for the semester and then learning various kinds of tools that have to do with stress coping. So I actually am gonna bring this one up, okay? So here's our menu. And one of the first tools in here is this stress coping. Can y'all see that, or do I need to do a new share?
No, we can see it. I can see it.
Okay, okay. So, why is this so small? So what we've got in each module, so this will be my show and tell. What we've got in each module is a little bit of information about stress, what happens, or whatever the topic is, what happens during stress, some references around, what we know about like the physiological responses to stress, that kind of thing, right? So here's some more about the HPA axis and how the body responds to stress. So some evidence-based information here. And then you can see like here is one of the first little activities, just this little chunk that would take 5 or 10 minutes of classroom time. Just writing down examples for students of how they recognize when they're stressed, what kinds of events make them stressed, right? And then moving into, here's another activity where they can write down their own observations about their coping strategies. And then there's an opportunity to discuss that in small groups so that there's this emphasis on, we're all under stress right now. What are we doing that is helping us cope? So, and there are, modules on, sort of basic skills like exercise and sleep and, other resilient strategies. But the idea is and some of the information students have already been exposed to, and some of the information may be new. And also, we really kind of prioritize the idea of making sure that the information that we're providing students includes current science, right? What do we really know about what works and what doesn't work. And then, breaking that out into, these manageable pieces. So I'll send y'all the link to the Canvas course so you can peruse yourself, okay?
Please do. And get that on the webpage as well.
Sure.
I'm going to talk about that. And I think, so how do we incorporate stress coping in? That's the question I want people to talk about. If you're teaching a class on architecture, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, how would you incorporate this, or is it impossible?
No, it's perfect. Civil engineering is all about stress.
Right.
Right.
And resilience of buildings.
Yeah.
And fatigue and stress and strain. And so it's really, it builds in, I think. Incidentally, I'm not an engineer.
So
I think this is such an important point is, making your teaching, whatever it is, relevant, and, making sure that students understand that this is going to be relevant to, whatever kind of investigations they're doing in the classroom right now, but also relevant to what's going to serve them in the future.
Just want to bring up we talked a lot about this as first year seminar courses, all the intro to engineering courses. We talked about this back in July, August, and we brought in the three of our class sessions were devoted to this type of activity. And the biggest feedback I got from students was, why does this matter? Why, like, I don't care. Like, because their first semester, it's going in one year out the other. They're not engaging with it. They're here for an engineering degree. I got so many FCQ comments of the first third of the class or a quarter of the class was a waste. Yet, it was necessary that I talked about it because a student was in distress and reached out to me because of it. So it was useful. But I think engaging engineering students in the technical side of things and making it what is just the science behind it, they're going to gravitate to that and connect with the material more. So I think that's a good strategy that I think folks should probably incorporate, is like what we just said, tied to the material.
I was going to say the same thing. I think the biggest thing I heard from students is exam anxiety, right? This idea that, especially online too, like that they can't navigate exams the way they usually do, and it's just there's so much stress, and then they don't feel like they're showing what they know. And I like to show them the data of like how contemplative practices or breathing practices can help you be a better problem solver, can help you be a better scientist. Instead of just, oh, let's stop class and do a stress coping activity, they'll be like, why are we doing, that typically does get rejected in STEM classrooms. But the interesting conversation we had once at SASE, because where I taught, we had an interdisciplinary team, is we saw students resisting those activities in math classes, but the same students would do the activities in writing classes with no hesitation. They're like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing here, but we're not supposed to be doing it over here. Right. And so I think it takes a little more framework as to how it's important in all disciplines, right? And that there's actually some data around it.
So Jay, my class is mostly juniors and seniors, and I think they're gravitating towards it a little bit more because maybe they've just had the experience of like last spring. But I think to everyone's point, I think so far I've actually I do reiterate, this is science, right? This is all based upon science. And by being a lab class, I have 2 labs, Tuesdays and Thursdays, which are an hour and 50 minutes. So I think it makes it a little bit easier that every Tuesday, the first 10 to 15 minutes of class is related to, this resilience program, just because it's a small percentage of time compared to a lecture class, right? And then, of course, lab classes are a little bit more unstructured once we finish it, because they're all doing their different projects. So far, I think I agree with everyone saying, stressing that this is based upon science really helps the students, I think, gravitate towards it.
I'm going to jump in my teacher mode. Last semester, I taught a lecture of 50 students, and I built into that 2 stress items. Now, my course is on comic books as literature. So it's different, it's humanities. But I had them do a series of 6 cartoons and cartoon strips. And the result of that, to do a cartoon, a good cartoon or a good strip, it's 7 hours of work. to do it well. And the feedback I got from my students was that it was a lot of work, but it was relaxing work. And I've imported that into my Herbst class, and it's the same thing. They find that it's work related to, and we discuss it, but it is a relaxing work. The other thing I've done is I assign a monthly journal entry, and each student has to write me, and I have to write them back. So that generates 50 email a month, which I then have to reply to. So it's work, but it hits at what Michael brought up at the very beginning, which is how do you know them? And they have different backgrounds, and what are they individually struggling with? And it gives me some way into them. I have found last semester especially, but this semester it's clearly happening again, that though I am now mediated from my students by the screen, I know them better because they tell me things. And, you know, once we start the journal relationship, they write me off month too, right? And again, it's more email for me, which sometimes I cuss, you know, dang, there's a lot. But on the other hand, they're telling me things about their lives. I know when their grandparents die and when they're moving from Portland to Boulder, and that opens a channel of communication. It's neither related to, it's not particularly related to my course. It's just something I'm doing to compensate for the stress.
I teach a small enough course where I'm able to do that kind of thing and give people feedback after class. Just say, that was a great comment. And students really love that. I would too, you know.
Yeah, that's another thing I've started doing, which is writing them. So when they miss class, I write them. When they miss an assignment, I write them. I used to not do that because I figured that was on them. But now I'm realizing that, Jason, you brought up Beckett, right? We're in this existential crisis and somebody's got to be paying attention.
I think it also helps to re-advertise your office hours, and because students just keep forgetting. It's at the beginning of the syllabus, they've forgotten it, and also to say, you know, can people come to those office hours? If not, here's a different time. I've got one at Monday evening at 9 p.m. and that's a good time.
I've got a thought to share, kind of a personal story too. I think in addition to the comment earlier about flexibility, one of the other keywords I have is empathy. And one of the things that I experienced last summer, my dad's 95. He got COVID and we almost lost him. He was in the ICU. He came out, but at 95, we watched his transition from a very healthy guy to a very weak man who was ready to die to back to be a resilient, happy guy again over a period of 6 months. And that gave me a lot of inspiration to watch that. But I also experienced the journey, as many people around the world have, in kind of some despair and stress associated with that personal experience that wasn't related to my job at all. It was just something that life throws us. And I think one of the unique things about this pandemic is that it is a universal experience. I have a global team in my industry job. We talk to people across the world, and everybody has commonality here that we can lean on each other and have some common understanding. And so one of the things my 95-year-old dad told me a few times in my life, but certainly recently, was if you can't control something, don't stress about it. And I think one of the things that we're all faced with here is that we can't control much of what's going on in life. And so I'm trying to bring that message to students as well, because they are put in situations where they can't control what's going on. And if I can help them realize that they don't need to carry as much of a burden of stress and they can get rid of some of it, hopefully that lightens their load and makes them have an easier job focusing on the job at hand. So empathy, trying to make sure that they understand that we also live through hardships and that we understand what they're going through. And then when I think about their situation, I try to, I don't know them, but I'll make some assessment of what they might be going through. And then in my mind, I try to double it or triple it and say, they're probably dealing with a lot more than I'm aware of. So what can I do to try to make it easier for them to get through my course?
Beautiful.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's just, you know, in some ways it's easier to make decisions. I don't know, I found about late assignments or whatever, you know, your default is just be kind. and, you know, what's the most compassionate response I can have in this moment to whatever a student is bringing? And it just makes life a whole lot easier for me and for them. And I just really appreciate what you're saying too about your decision making with students, Lyndon, and kind of how this sort of collective universal experience for us has shifted your thinking too. Although I suspect it's always part of you. That's what I think.
One thing that I've done with the late assignments is I've turned it into an educational opportunity for the students to practice their communication skills. If I welcome late assignments, but if you're going to turn in something late, you need to write me a well-crafted email beforehand articulating when you're going to turn it in. You don't have to give me a reason for why. I haven't required that, but just communicate. This is something you're going to have to do as an engineer. And it's worked out really well. And again, it's been a great way to connect with some students because they tell you so much what you were saying, William, they tell you about their lives, but you're able to still use it as a learning opportunity.
So I want to shift us a little bit. One thing I want to carry on throughout this whole discussion as we go on is how to balance content structure with techniques of resilience, with technological changes. It seems to me that we've got to learn how to change our approach to curriculum. Maybe not, but that's something I'd like to explore. But in the few minutes we have left, what are people doing for their own resilience? What are faculty and staff doing to be resilient? I mean, I'll tell you, I'm drinking a lot of water. That's one of the things I'm doing. And I'm trying to go on walks in Chautauqua at least 3 times a week. So those are my 2 techniques. What are other people doing? Yeah, water. The other way didn't work. Turned out making me less resilient. What are people doing for their resilience?
Like, this is one of the things I talk with students about too, is trying to structure what feels really unstructured, in terms of getting out every morning for a walk, you know, just having a schedule that that is close to like what we used to experience when we went to campus. And, you know, there was a time that we had to show up, and there was a time that we needed to, you know, get in our car, and a time that we came home. So I think that's part of what's helped is just like knowing that I have a time for exercise, and I have a time for, you know, work, and I don't work until 10 o'clock very often, although that happens sometimes. But, you know, just trying to say, okay, well, that's my work day. That's what I can get done today. And then having some just sort of rituals and routines at home with my husband to, you know, for both of us to sort of signify, okay, that's it. I could be working for another 5 hours, but I'm not going to today.
Michael, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with you that getting outside helps enormously. You know, as part of a routine, I walk into my office kind of a few times a week, and that helps enormously. So final thoughts.
we're coming to the end of our time.
My final thought is, I think earlier Keith might have mentioned something about being hopeful that we were figuring this thing out. I'm very hopeful. I've seen not only at the university, but in industry, people figure out how to do things in different ways and to work together to build something that's better. And so I'm very hopeful. I've seen change in my course. I've figured out that I can look at things differently and try to innovate. And I think that all of us can continue to be successful. So hopeful.
I think also, if I could tag onto that, just hopeful also about, just increased awareness about the importance of wellness and the importance of, the idea of like promoting wellness as a professional issue, as a student issue, as a campus-wide issue. And that's been a silver lining for sure.
I also think that, when we do come back onto campus, what we've learned, and sometimes it takes stress of some type to force us to change or motivates us to change, that I think, we'll actually be teaching better. I think we've learned a lot on how to teach and how to reach out to people that we should think of taking into when we go back on to full-time on campus.
I was actually going to, share that as my resilience strategies of finding the things that are actually working better right now than they were before. So for example, my kids are home more, which is challenging some days, but we have like a family dinner every night, and instead of them running off to do things. And I'm like, I agree. I think there's things about teaching that I'm learning that, I can do better. So that's an interesting point. I think looking for the things that are working right now is helping me.
So we're at the end of our time. I think that ultimately what we sum up here is that the real resilient message is that in the long term, there's a possibility for change, for positivity that carries on not only curricular change, but organizational change and a larger intellectual framework change. So this is the beginning of a great conversation. Next week, we're not going to meet next week, but the week after, I just want to talk about remote learning. And my thinking there is all learning has constraints. The classroom is a constraint, the on-campus classroom. And remote learning has a lot of constraints that we've all encountered. I'd like us to vent a little bit about remote learning and then think about what positivity there is in those constraints. I hope you all can join. Again, it's great to meet new people and to see old friends. It felt a little like a Christmas present. So just wonderful to see everybody. And I hope this was useful for you.
Thank you so much, William.
Yeah, thank you, William.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.